You are now watching The Niche.
To say the Nintendo Switch 2 situation has been bad would be an understatement. The Nintendo Switch 2 might have just been Nintendo's most anticipated console of all time. They built up a lot of hype, and the momentum was strong. And when the Nintendo Direct finally happened, fans were blown away seeing next-gen 4K Nintendo games for the first time. But unfortunately, that momentum quickly stopped. Mario Kart World and most Switch 2 Edition games are $80. Game key cards aren't even on the cartridge. Pre-orders got delayed in the United States and Canada, and a slew of misinformation has caused what is none other than a disastrous situation for Nintendo. Considering such bad press and a potential bad launch, I've seen a lot of comparisons between the Nintendo Switch 2 and the Wii U, such as this one right here. In this video, we'll be analyzing the Wii U situation and comparing it to what's going on with the Nintendo Switch 2. Being a Nintendo fan for around 15 years, I've seen a lot, and considering such, all of Nintendo's failures tend to have common factors. I'll be going over the 4 key factors that determine whether or not a system will be successful, those being concept, game lineup, pricing, and publicity. So the question is there a possibility that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be the next Wii U? First, we'll be taking a look at the concept of the systems. The Wii U's selling point is with the gamepad controller. So much so that Nintendo wanted you to know full well about the new controller when they revealed the Wii U. They wanted you to know 12 times that it was a new controller, and never once the new console. Considering unconventional gaming systems like the Nintendo DS and Wii were a goldmine for Nintendo, it did make sense for them to follow it up with succeeding unconventional systems. Though in the case of the Nintendo 3DS, it was really a more powerful DS with a 3D gimmick and more features. The Wii U's identity, however, was based on the gamepad. This was a concept that was a cool novelty, but not something that appealed to the masses, and it certainly wasn't something worth designing a system around. We saw asymmetric gaming before with games like Pac-Man Vs. Having a peripheral or using an existing handheld as a controller is fine, but it's kinda like if the GameCube's selling point and main controller were the DK bongos, albeit less extreme. The Nintendo Switch 2, on the other hand, is a much more similar situation to the Nintendo 3DS. It's way more powerful than the Nintendo Switch, supporting 4K gaming, and it does have some new features like game chat and mouse controls. It's really the first Nintendo console since the GameCube that's focused on power, and it's an excellent selling point. Why would Nintendo make a console that's not a hybrid like the Switch again? You can't go back from that. The Nintendo Switch 2 makes it clear that it's a more powerful, capable Switch, which is easy for consumers to understand. With the Wii U, the gamepad was a confusing concept. Was it an accessory for the Wii? What does Wii U even mean? This is also a crucial aspect to bring up that isn't brought up enough in discussions about the Wii U. There was an accessory released for the Wii in 2011 called the U-Draw Game Tablet. Around the same time the Wii U was revealed. It was made by THQ and mainly focused on drawing, but the concept and name is very similar to that of the Wii U. But regardless of the confusing nature of the Wii U, it wasn't a good concept to sell a system. This goes more into the games, but most games didn't know how to use a gamepad, even from Nintendo. And third parties? Forget about it. Now personally, I do have an appreciation for the Wii U for trying something new, but for the most part, it wasn't compelling like the Wii's motion controls or the Nintendo DS's touchscreen. Unlike the Wii U, the Nintendo Switch 2 has a much better concept, and it's easy for the average consumer to understand what it is. A bad concept is not something the Wii U and Nintendo Switch 2 have in common. The reason why you buy a game system is for the games. Look, the Xbox Series X makes a stellar dust apartment complex. And I know, it's noble to provide affordable housing, but that's not what a game system is for. Let's take a look at the Wii U's early lineup. Nintendo Land is the Wii U's Wii Sports equivalent. It was made to showcase the features of the gamepad and the Wii U. As a Nintendo fan, it's such a cool game. Seeing all these Nintendo franchises represented at an amusement park was way ahead of its time, almost 13 years ahead of its time here in Florida. It's a really cool concept and it's really cool for Nintendo fans, but it did not have the mass appeal that Wii Sports did. Wii Sports was so appealing and so successful because anyone could understand and enjoy it. Kids, parents, even grandparents played it. I actually bought a Wii from a lady who went to my gym for $20 back in 2016. It came with the box and everything. It even included the balance board. Games like Wii Fit and Wii Sports were very appealing to everyone. Nintendo Land? Primarily Nintendo fans were interested. Though if I'm being real with you, I'd totally be down for a Nintendo Land sequel. You know what sequel I wouldn't be down for? Hoo boy! When it comes to showcasing a system's full capabilities, Mr. Mario himself is the best at it. The Nintendo 64 got Super Mario 64 as its signature new Mario game. The Wii got Super Mario Galaxy. The Wii U, it got New Super Mario Bros. U. New Super Mario Bros. U is at its core a complete rehash of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Considering it was the first HD Mario game, you would expect to be blown away, but it looks nearly indistinguishable from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Don't believe me? I've been using footage from New Super Mario Bros. Wii this whole time. Very subtle differences with more detailed backgrounds are not how you showcase a technological leap. I don't blame just the concept and marketing of the Wii U for its failure. I also blame the identical looking Wii sequels. That right there really made consumers believe that the Wii U was an accessory for the Wii. The Wii U eventually got games worth playing, and more importantly, games that were an excellent showcase of the gamepad. Games like Super Mario Maker and Splatoon would have been system sellers, but by the time they were released, it was too little, too late. The Wii U went without any major first-party games up until Pikmin 3 in August of 2013, but when it released, the series was still relatively niche, and even games like Super Mario 3D World and Mario Kart 8 were seen as just sequels to Nintendo 3DS games to the average consumer. Now onto the Nintendo Switch 2. This is the first major hardware leap for Nintendo since the Wii U released back in 2012. It's the first 4K Nintendo system, and its new games really showcase that. Mario Kart World is the next evolution of Mario Kart that's been over a decade in the making. I will say, at this point, we still don't know the extent of the open world. If its purpose is serving as a basis for an adventure mode of sorts, that is a massive evolution from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But if it's at its worst, just a map where you can find food bags to get costumes, that would be underwhelming. And of course there's a concern with the intermissions between tracks ruining the flow of the game. I usually would get into a critique of the game, but I want to wait until the Mario Kart World Direct to properly judge the game. I'll also be playing it early at the Nintendo Switch 2 experience later this month, because I have a good feeling that there's much more to this game that we don't know. But in all likelihood, this is what you call a system seller, if it actually sells considering the egregious price point. Just with the graphics and roster alone, it's unlike anything we've seen from Mario Kart before, and it's something we couldn't have had on a prior Nintendo system. But you know which game I'm even more hyped for? Donkey Kong Bonanza. Mario Kart World has more to prove, but Donkey Kong Bonanza already proved itself and then some. It's clearly developed by the Super Mario Odyssey team. It's not only a successor to that game, but it's a game that couldn't have been made on prior hardware. The ways Donkey Kong can interact with and destroy the environments really could only be done with more capable hardware. And of course, visually, it's mind-blowing. If you were to tell me that we wouldn't get a 3D Mario game in the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, I would have been disappointed. But if you then told me we're getting a 3D Donkey Kong game instead, I would have been like, This is actually way better. Considering the lineup so far, and that's not even accounting for the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, the Nintendo Switch 2 is in a much better position than the Wii U was with game lineup. The contrast between the lineup is night and day. Even once everything was all said and done with the Wii U, most games were good, but not mind-blowing. And the Nintendo 3DS had Wii U game equivalents, so for most casuals, why even bother with the Wii U? But the Nintendo Switch 2, it only had one Direct so far, and its lineup is outstanding. Game lineup is not something that the Nintendo Switch 2 has in common with the Wii U. Now we get into the factor you've all been waiting for, pricing. But before getting into that, make sure to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. I'll be attending the Nintendo Switch 2 experience later this month, so make sure to subscribe to see my thoughts on Nintendo Switch 2 and its games before almost everyone else. It has been a dream of mine to get that silver play button, and we're less than 20,000 subscribers away. I've also started channel memberships, so feel free to subscribe to them. It helps the channel greatly, especially considering the Switch 2 prices. And don't worry, none of the tiers are $80. The Wii U launched with two versions. There was a white basic version that only included the system, gamepad, and 8GB of storage. But for $350, you'd get the deluxe black version, which included the system, gamepad, Nintendo Land, 32GB of storage, and even accessories. The Wii U was in the exact position that the Nintendo Switch 2 is in when it comes to console pricing. When it released, the Wii was $150, so jumping from $150 to the basic $300 was a 50% increase, just like the jump from the $300 Switch to the $450 Switch 2. You could even get the version with a pack-in game for $200 more. Additionally, most Wii U games were $10 more than Wii games. Keep in mind, Wii games were $50 at launch. A lot of people tend to forget that, but with Wii U games being $60, you didn't see that insane backlash that the Nintendo Switch 2 is getting. We know that the standard for Nintendo Switch 2 games is going to be $80. It's not just Mario Kart. Most Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games are also $80. It doesn't matter if there's new content. It's not worth the extra $20 for most consumers. A $10 increase is somewhat normal even if nobody likes it. But a $20 increase? That extra $20 is going to add up fast. And it sets an awful precedent for the gaming industry if these games sell well. That's not even accounting for the additional costs. The Wii U had free online, and the controllers were reasonably priced. You could get a Wii remote that included a game for only $50. Why else did Wii Play sell so well? But for the Nintendo Switch 2, the Joy-Cons are $90 and aren't even Hall effect. The Pro Controller is $80. The USB camera is $50? And that's not even accounting for the carrying case and screen protector. It isn't so much about the Nintendo Switch 2 console price itself. I don't mind paying a little more if it means the Nintendo Switch 2 is a capable game system that runs games well, and is future-proofed. But $80 games? That's when people will skidee away from Nintendo.
Thank you, Daddy. I knew you wouldn't say no. Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures await!
Usually when people say, "It'll sell well regardless," that actually means, "I'm hyped! Shut up about the issue! I'm done hearing about it!" I actually haven't seen the usual Nintendo fanboys defend the prices. Even Petey is done with it. But when I see the rare posts like this, part of me just dies inside. "It'll sell well" can apply to things like Pokemon. Yeah, a majority of Pokemon Switch games are crap, but they're affordable. Combine that with the familiarity of Pokemon, as well as the addiction aspect and FOMO, that explains why it does so well even if the games are of bad quality. But with these new prices, the crack known as Pokemon will effectively become Coke. People won't be able to afford the new games and will have to be content with their Nintendo Switch games. The Wii U was expensive, and it got a price cut of $50 a few months later. It didn't help, but that was more like a quarter of why the Wii U failed. Pricing is a much bigger issue with the Switch too. It goes beyond the system. Overpriced accessories and online features are also part of the problem. But as everyone's been saying, it's those games that are such a problem. The publicity surrounding the Wii U was mostly one thing: confusion. The Wii U reveal trailer left more questions than answers. The games shown looked very similar to that of Wii games. And of course, there is the name Wii U. It wasn't clear that it was a new console, and that confusion persisted throughout the Wii U's life. The Nintendo Switch 2, on the other hand, is clear as day a new console. On top of that, before all this bad news was revealed, the Nintendo Switch 2 was easily Nintendo's most anticipated console. With the Wii U being a successor to the Wii, you would expect a similar level of anticipation. The Wii is absolutely a real console, but a lot of the popularity was with non-gamers. It sort of blurred the line of being a fad in addition to a console, but the Nintendo Switch was not a fad. It completely revolutionized the way we game with its hybrid concept, even more than the Wii did with the motion controls. Nintendo had everything going for them. They built up the strongest momentum possible for the Switch too. But with the $80 games, a ton of hype was gone, and it's only gotten worse. Much worse. There are the game key cards, which don't even contain the game itself on the cartridge. When the eShop inevitably goes down, these game key cards will become unusable. Then the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games have caused a lot of confusion, where people thought that they wouldn't contain the additional content on the cartridge, and that's a fair assumption to make considering the disclaimer on the box. Thankfully, Nintendo confirmed that all the content will be on the cartridge, but the misinformation has caused a lot of confusion. The Wii U only had confusion, but the Nintendo Switch 2 has confusion and bad publicity. Doug Bowser's recent interview didn't help at all. In fact, it was pretty much stirring the poop. But saying that games are $80 based on variables? Variable pricing? That leads to variable purchasing. To make matters even worse, Doug Bowser just said, in regards to the pricing, if people find the Nintendo Switch 2 to be unaffordable, while we're still supporting the original Switch, that would be like if Apple said, well, you can get an iPhone 15 after the 16E backlash. Press and publicity is a much bigger issue for the Nintendo Switch 2 than it was with the Wii U. Our final category is a culmination of every category. So far, the Wii U had it worse with the concept and the game lineup, but the Nintendo Switch 2 is much worse when it comes to pricing and PR. They are tied. So does this mean that the Nintendo Switch 2 could be the next Wii U? Well, it has been a very rough start for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's not going to be the next Wii U. What you need to make the next Wii U is a culmination of a confusing concept, a concept that shouldn't have had a system designed around it once it's understood, a mostly play-it-safe library of games that looked way too similar to Wii games, in addition to the expensive pricing and confusing press. The Nintendo Switch 2 has had some awful PR, especially recently, and the pricing needs to be resolved. I do not predict that the Switch 2 will be the Wii U 2, but what I do predict is that Nintendo should have called the Switch 2 the Switch 1 because they effectively have had their own Xbox One situation going on here. Right down to Don Matrick and Doug Bowser's identical played the old console comment.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message. If you don't, like it.
If you
Nintendo needs to address the pricing and confusion surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2. They need to make things crystal clear. They should also backpedal on the bad decisions too, just like how Microsoft did with being able to play used games, because the Nintendo Switch 2 has so much potential, with really greed and bad PR being the only major problems. Honestly, Unless you're a content creator or have a business that needs a Nintendo Switch 2 like a barcade, I would not recommend getting one day one, because these prices are absolutely egregious and a solution must be found. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments and keep calm and da-don.